The small, unassuming pawn shop rested quietly on the corner of a peaceful street. Its weathered wooden sign creaked slightly as it swayed with a soft afternoon breeze. From the outside, it looked like just another forgotten relic of time, blending seamlessly into the slow rhythm of the town. But inside was a different story altogether. As the door creaked open, a delicate chime rang out, breaking the hushed stillness within. The shop carried the scent of old wood and polished brass, a mix of history and nostalgia. Shelves lined the walls, each one covered in layers of dust and memories. Trinkets, antique watches, and forgotten treasures sat in silent wait, each item holding a story, each object whispering a past long gone. Behind the counter, an elderly woman named Margaret sat with a quiet patience, her fingers gently polishing a silver locket. She had owned this place for decades, watching as faces came and went, as lives intersected within these walls. Over time, she had developed a gift, the ability to sense why someone had walked through her doors. Whether out of desperation, sentimentality, or simple curiosity, she could tell. And when the soldier entered, she knew. Margaret's sharp, knowing eyes immediately landed on him. His uniform, though neatly pressed, had faded from years of wear. His posture carried the weight of unspoken burdens, his tired eyes revealing more than any words ever could. He hesitated at the threshold, as if stepping inside required more courage than he had left. Margaret set the locket down. This was not just another customer. This was a man with a story. Eric stepped forward, his boots scuffing against the wooden floor. Reaching into his pocket, he pulled out something small, something weathered by time. With careful hands, he placed it on the counter, a tarnished military medal. Its surface, once gleaming, had dulled over the years, but the weight it carried was immeasurable. Margaret's gaze flickered from the medal to the man before her. She noticed how his fingers lingered on its edge, reluctant, almost pained. This wasn't just a transaction, it was a moment of reckoning. "How much can I get for this?" Eric's voice was low, distant, almost as if he was forcing himself to speak the words. Margaret picked up the medal, turning it over gently in her palm. It wasn't just metal, it was history. Sacrifice. A deeply personal piece of someone's life. She looked up at him, her voice soft but firm. "Are you sure you want to sell this?" Eric hesitated. His jaw tightened. "I need the money," he admitted, but there was something in his tone, a waver, just barely there. And Margaret heard it. The uncertainty. The pain. She studied him for a long moment. This wasn't just about money. There was something else. Something deeper. But she knew better than to push too hard. With a sigh, she placed the medal back on the counter, her fingers resting on it lightly, giving him time. "Let me take a closer look," she said. Lifting the medal again, she examined it more thoroughly. The weight of it was more than just physical. The design was familiar, the kind of honor not given lightly. Its edges were worn, its surface scratched, but dignity still radiated from it. And then her eyes caught something. A faint engraving on the back. 3 simple letters. JRW. Margaret frowned. Something about those initials tugged at a distant memory, buried deep. She glanced up at Eric, whose gaze was fixed on the counter, his hands clenched into fists at his sides. His breathing was slow, measured, as if bracing himself. "These initials," she said carefully. JRW. Who do they belong to? Eric's jaw tensed. His eyes flickered to the medal before darting away. When he spoke, his voice was quieter. "It belonged to my grandfather." Margaret didn't respond right away. Over the years, she had seen many people enter her shop, some desperate, some broken, some simply letting go of the past. But this was different. There was something about the way Eric couldn't quite meet her gaze. Something in the way his fingers twitched, as if resisting the urge to take the medal back. "This is a high honor," she finally said, running her fingers over the medal. "You don't see these often." Eric swallowed. "I know." Margaret studied him, then set the medal down gently between them. She leaned forward slightly, her voice soft. "Tell me, son, why are you really selling this?" Eric looked away, his chest rising and falling in deep, controlled breaths. For a long moment, silence stretched between them. Then, barely above a whisper, he answered, "I don't have a choice." Margaret said nothing, allowing the silence to linger. It wasn't empty. It was heavy, filled with everything unsaid. Eric's fingers curled into a fist, his knuckles whitening. Then, as if exhaling a burden too great to bear, he finally spoke. "I served 8 years. Deployed 3 times. I've seen things I can never unsee, things I don't talk about." His voice was steady but distant, like a man recounting a dream that felt too real. He glanced at the medal. "This belonged to my grandfather, James Robert Walker. He fought in World War II. A hero, they said. But to him, war wasn't about medals or recognition. It was about survival. About making sure the man next to you made it home." A small, sad smile flickered across Eric's lips, gone as quickly as it appeared. "When I was a kid, he never told me stories about the war. Instead, he taught me how to fish, how to fix an old truck, how to stand up for what's right." Eric swallowed hard. "He's the reason I enlisted. I wanted to make him proud." Margaret saw now. The weight he carried wasn't just in his shoulders, it was in his heart. "He passed away a few years ago." Eric's voice dropped lower. "I promised him I'd keep this medal forever." He hesitated, shame creeping into his expression. "But life doesn't care about promises." His voice cracked. "I lost my job. Bills kept piling up. I did everything I could, odd jobs, anything. But it wasn't enough. Rent's due next week, and I don't even have enough for groceries." He let out a bitter chuckle, shaking his head. "So here I am, selling the only thing I have left of him." Margaret's heart ached. She had heard countless stories of hardship before, but this felt different. She looked down at the medal, her fingers grazing its surface. And then, something shifted in her expression. A decision made. "Eric," she said softly, lifting her gaze to meet his. "Your grandfather's story isn't over yet." Without another word, she disappeared into the back room. Eric watched, confusion flickering across his face. When Margaret returned, she carried a small, time-worn box. Placing it gently on the counter, she lifted the lid. Inside was a black-and-white photograph, its edges curled with age. She picked it up and turned it toward him. The man in uniform looked just like Eric. Eric's breath caught. "How do you know him?" Margaret smiled, her voice barely above a whisper. "Because your grandfather saved my life." And with that, a story unfolded, one of courage, sacrifice, and a debt finally repaid. Some moments change us forever. And this was one of them. To be continued in Part 2.